Hi, welcome to Inkett's Novel Writing Boot Camp. I'm Bryan Schmidt, and these are the fundamentals of fiction. Lesson 7, Dialogue. Welcome to the Fundamentals of Fiction Dialogue. I'm Bryan Schmidt. The chances are that 50% or more of most novels will consist of dialogue. Dialogue is the character's chief method of communicating information with one another. But remember, dialogue is not the same as conversation. Dialogue is drama. It's a certain type of dramatic representation of conversation that has conflict and drama and urgency. It may imitate conversation, but there's no chit-chat. Dialogue involves imparting key information about plot, emotion, character, setting, and more that drives the story forward. It involves building tension, pace, and foreshadowing conflict, as well as expressing present conflict. Dialogue is one of the essential craft tools of good fiction writing. When done well, dialogue can impart several bits of information about your characters just through word choice. Diction says a lot about your characters. Bishops, kings, politicians, professors, and others speak differently and with more sophistication and less common vernacular, perhaps, than truck drivers, plumbers, mechanics, farmers, stable hands. Add in gang members, foreigners, and others, and you have a third style of diction as well. Use diction to differentiate between characters and help us know who is speaking without even requiring a speech tag. We can even get to know which character it is by their unique diction. You can know the area of the world they come from, their education level, their level of class and refinement, their self-esteem, their social circles, their religion, lack of religion, and so much more, just via how the character speaks. The unique voice of each character will add depth and realness to your world and story like nothing else. Dialogue can also tell readers about your world. Do they speak familiarly to present-day people around us, or like people from another place or time? Do they speak with vernacular and nuance and pop culture references, or are their references odd and unusual, like from another planet or another age, even requiring us to work to understand them a bit? Point of view characters engage in two main types of dialogue throughout a fictional work: external dialogue with other characters and internal dialogue with themselves. Now, we've talked a lot about external dialogue so far. Internal dialogue is similar, but it's their inner voice and thoughts taking expression. If a character's a con artist, for example, they may use different diction externally than they do internally because maybe they were putting on an accent or playing a character. This tells us a lot about who they are. So if they fake an accent, they don't really have, etc., we know that they are a deceptive character and person and not wholly reliable. Also, the character's internal dialogue will reveal what they choose to reveal and not reveal to various characters, which tells us a lot about their motives, emotions, and their relationship with those characters. Internal dialogue is where characters debate decisions, mourn mistakes, and so much more. And it's necessary for storytelling because we cannot see what we are not shown. So it provides a method of showing what is going on in the inner life of the characters that is essential to building good conflict and drama in your story and showing good character growth. Remember, characters may speak differently to one character than another depending on their relationship, their motives, etc. If hanging with old friends from the old ghetto, one may slip into dialect left behind in childhood for those interactions, even if the character usually speaks in a more refined way with characters outside that world and life. One speaks to a lover differently than to a mother or a sister or a boss or a priest, for example. One also speaks differently to a king or a ruler than a fellow citizen, and often strangers. One speaks differently to teachers, fellow students, so on. So remember to establish changes in dialogue appropriate to the circumstances and setting in which the dialogue is occurring, and who and to whom the characters are dialoguing with. This will make your world come alive and feel realistic. To write dialogue well, it helps to go out and observe people as well as to read a lot. If you're writing a historical period, find movies, newsreels, and other books and observe carefully, taking notes on how people talk, turns of phrase, idioms, etc. To write teenagers, go to Sam's Club or Costco or Walmart and sit in the food court and listen. Go to a mall or a theater. Note how the teens speak to each other versus adults, how they address strangers versus friends, etc. Do the same with anyone else in a particular group that you need to study or in whatever profession, from cops to priests, jewelers to plumbers, and more that you might be writing about. Writing down key observations in a notebook will create an invaluable resource to jog your memory later when the time comes to write various characters' dialogue. You want dialogue to sound believable and real after all, and that means You have to write it so it sounds natural while still performing all the dramatic functions beyond regular conversation that it must to move forward your plot and your story and the drama. Another area of concern related to dialogue is speech tags. The most common of these, of course, is just he said, she said, Bob said, Oliver said, Jane said. But sometimes people try to get creative and they do so really badly. Here are 10 common tips to avoid frequent pitfalls in writing dialogue and speech tags. 1. Use your tags sparingly. Fancy tags like he expostulated or she espoused are less clear and far more distracting than just simple he said, she said. So keep the tags simple when you absolutely must use them. Instead, convey the manner in which a character speaks. Make it obvious from what is said, the body language, etc. 2. Instead of tags, use actions. People talk while actively engaging in activities. So should your characters. Giving them business to do during dialogue also allows you to identify who's speaking without resorting to overused tags. Sarah's doing the dishes, when every time she pulls out a dish, you know she's talking. Some come in the form of characterizing the speaker. His eyebrows lifted with menace, for example. Bob's fist clenched as he spoke. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheek with every word. 3. Avoid expositional dialogue when possible. We all violated this rule from time to time, but especially when two characters should already know the information being imparted, it seems unnatural and distracting. In such cases, internal monologue is a better tool and far more natural. Characters may think about stuff they already know, but wouldn't tell each other stuff each of them knows already. 4. Keep it short. People talk in choppy sentences. Long soliloquies are rare. So in dialogue, use a combination of short sentences to make it flow and feel like real people talking. Let them interrupt each other too. People do that in real life. It adds to the pace, tension, and drama of it, and the realness. 5. Avoid phonetic spellings. They're difficult to read. Their indications of dialogue can be used instead to get the reader to do the rest. Overuse of dialect becomes distracting to readers and can actually take them out of the story. Keep the things your characters say as unobtrusive as possible so the story flows seamlessly. 6. Dialogue is conflict. Conflict keeps the story moving. People talk like they're playing table tennis back and forth. This moves the story forward. Lace your dialogue with conflict. It adds dramatic urgency to every line the characters say and keeps the story's pace. 7. Use other characters. Let a character imply who's speaking to them by saying something specific to only that person. If you use business well, see number 2 above, having a character refer to something the other character is doing is a great way to do this. 8. Give each character a distinctive voice. Again, this is where dialect and different kinds of dialogue and diction come into play. Overdo it and it's caricature, but we all have our own speech tics. Create some for your characters and sprinkle them throughout. Readers will learn them and know who's speaking just from the text. For example, Captain Jack Sparrow loves the term of affection love and uses that a lot. He also says savvy a great deal as well. There are others you can probably remember too. Study characterization and see what other writers have done and emulate the example. 9. Speak the dialogue aloud. Talk it out. Get inside the heads of your characters and say the lines. Play out the conversation you've written or even as you're writing. Does it sound natural? Does it flow? Your ear is often a way better judge than your eyes, and hearing it will give you an idea how readers will hear it too. 10. Remember what medium you're writing for. TV and film dialogue and novel dialogue are not necessarily the same. There is no third party to use intonation, facial expression, or body language to bring the dialogue to life. Your words alone are the conduit between yourself and the reader, and your prose skills and the reader's imaginations make it work. These tips are useful to revisit during your editing or revision phase, so I will remind you in Lesson 9 on editing to look at them again. Perhaps printing them out and saving them beside your writing desk will be useful as a reference, and we'll make them available to download for you from the Inca site. Okay. This week's assignment is for you to write another 2,000 words. Then take a look at your dialogue. Do your characters use appropriate diction to their circumstances? How can this be improved in ways that distinguish characters from each other and add nuance and depth? Do you use too many clever speech tags? Replace these with action tags or said to avoid intruding yourself into the story. Have you used internal dialogue effectively? Can you use more of it or less? How can you improve it to further your story? Make notes for your editing phase of what you need to go back and visit and where to save time when you revise. Then get back to writing. You're in the 7th week and making real progress. Pretty soon you'll have a full book done. So keep up the good work and happy writing.